Greetings, class, and welcome to week 2. Thank you very much for your flexibility as we look at learning in many different ways. Hopefully you have gotten a chance to review the announcement and looked in the week 2 folder, and you are well on your way to success in week 2. Today what I'd like to do is 3 things. One is review a little bit of the forward thinking. Normally we'll kick off in about 5 minutes beginning of each course, each class. We'll talk a little bit about some of the questions you have, some of the observations and insights, some of the information that you've provided. Today, because of the video, I don't want to waste your time listening to me review that information. But some of the things I'd like to talk a little bit about is human capital versus HR. HR is that process that you most often think about: hiring, firing, interviewing, compensation, tenure, all those type of things. But I want you to think a little bit more in the area of human capital as we develop individuals to support learning, to enhance the probability of learning, to increase enhance our learning culture and our learning communities. And so as we look at HR, we want to look at it very, very differently, again, through the human capital lens. Many of the questions that were brought up this time revolved around diversity. As we look at how do we create more diverse environments in an instructional setting to be more reflective of our student body. And it's difficult, it's very difficult, with 50% of our departments of education, colleges, being about 50% smaller, or most being about 50% smaller, and even that number of diverse individuals going into education. We need to really examine ourselves. What are we doing to support the excitement of our young people to go into education? How are we creating our educational environments and our cultures to attract people from diverse settings? We need individuals to support learning that look very much like our student populations, and so that's a big challenge. One of the things that we have done for about the last decade is trying to grow our own. We want to make sure that we find those great young people and help them understand the opportunities that there is in terms of education, working with area colleges to make sure that we have flexibility in supporting students, flexibility in bringing our paras of color and diversity back into the college classroom and finishing their degrees. Those are very important things. We can't just sit and wait because it's not going to happen. The other thing that you brought up was the district office HR, sometimes controlling the building. And say certainly the district office, a superintendent, HR director, certainly does have influence over the big picture of the personnel process in the district. At the same time, as a principal, we need to own that learning environment. We need to discuss and debate. We need to be very, very strong leaders when it comes to HR as we support and grow, attract, retain individuals in our building. Too often, principals don't like that. I talk to a lot of principals that say, I don't like the HR part, I don't like the finance part, I don't like the custodial buildings and ground part. Well, you're giving up a lot of your leverage for learning if you don't deeply engage. It's a lot easier to point your finger at the district and say, boy, they won't let me. Instead, taking control of those leverage items, because that's what's going to make a difference in creating a great environment. The last thing I really appreciated, and again we'll go more in depth in our normal WebEx sessions, is the resources, the many resources that you provided. As you look at some of those resources, you will see some wonderful opportunities to go deeper. And I want you to really encourage you to click on those websites and look at some of those areas, because your classmates have provided some wonderful opportunities, and I'd like to see you take advantage of them. So please take time to, on your assignments tab, go into the week 2 folder. Of course, click on the forward thinking and review a lot of those items. And if there is specific questions, let's plan on talking a little bit more, asking those questions during our week 3. We will also review our week 2 forward thinking, and I'll try to synthesize and summarize many of those items, but also give you a chance to ask a lot of questions and for us to have some of those debates. Next item that I'd like to do is each week I'd like to kind of go over the reading assignments. Of course, I'm not going to read to you, but one of the things that I do want to do is, from the principal's chair, really start looking at what are some of those important critical items. Hold on for just a moment here as we look at the summary of our chapters, our last few readings. I want to touch on just a few of those items that I believe, from the principal's perspective, are very important. Chapter 1, human resource leaders. As I mentioned before, we as principals need to be the human resource leaders. We need to take control. That doesn't mean that we need to minimize our superintendents, our HR professionals. At the same time, we need to make sure that we have the authority to engage deeply and take that responsibility. Organizational effectiveness over outcomes and governing philosophies. We talk a lot about mission, vision, values, and you have in a lot of different courses, mission, vision, values, and hiring individuals that meet that very well, but also hiring diverse populations to support that. There were several people in our last session that talked about what are the needs that we're looking for, not just hiring the best teacher, but what is the need that we're really looking for, and not necessarily hiring for the number of years of experience, but what are the experiences that that individual has, and how do they help connect the dots and build the bridges in our learning community. As we look at planning for staffing needs, every once in a while I'll talk to a principal that says, gosh, you know, I've been the principal for 5-10 years. All of a sudden I woke up and our population is different. Well, there's lots of things that you can look in your crystal ball. And I'm a little bit embarrassed for those individuals that say that, because I know exactly what our student body is going to look like in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. In fact, 20 years ago, I knew that we would be 40% students of color, and by gosh, our projections hit that. We've been working for a long time. As we've added our AVID program, as we've get other programs, we get a little bit deeper into our community. And so looking at enrollment projections will tell a story. You'll be able to look into your crystal ball. You'll be able to make subtle adjustments so you don't have to make earth-changing adjustments along the way. Recruiting teachers, job descriptions, expectations. It is always important to be in recruiting mode. It's never okay to stop being in recruiting mode, retaining mode. It's just to working with those human individuals that come into your organization, that you want to stay in your organization, and of course that you want to attract into your organization. This is not a leadership class or a motivation class. At the same time, as a principal, as an HR leader, we need to look at motivational theory. Why is it that some buildings have an energy to it? Why is it that some buildings have a large turnovers and others don't? It's because we understand those individuals. We understand our career anchors, challenging goals, the structure, the rewards, different ways to support individuals. The simple part of giving teachers time. Yes, dollars is nice. Yes, a pat on the back is nice, but giving teachers as much time as we possibly can. As I mentioned in our last session, my goal is to look at the contract and give teachers 50% more time than the contract gives them. I don't want to have debates about time. Yes, time is always going to be an issue, but I'm always going to err on the teacher's side, and I'm always going to give them more time, and that has created issues in our district. That's created issues with our union, because our union says you can't do that because it's not fair and equitable. Other schools aren't doing that. And I say, well, good for them, or too bad for them, good for us. We want to give teachers the ultimate amount of time that we possibly can, because I think that's one of the variables that are most needed for teachers. Not because I believe that, it's because that's what they tell me. That's what the research says. The last one is creating productive work environments. The qualities of productive work environment, really understanding your work environment, really having your hand on the pulse of how teachers feel and things that we can do better. Teacher stress and burnout, how do we engage with teachers? It is a stressful, emotional job as a teacher, and we need to do everything we can to break down barriers, to get all those roadblocks out of their way, so teachers can come into an environment and feel like they're supported, know that they're supported, and give that energy boost and that emotional energy back to them. Absenteeism, loss of student learning. The number of hours that teachers are gone, we lose learning. If teachers take advantage of every sick day, every vacation day, by gosh, we lose learning. Yes, they are entitled to those. At the same time, we want to make sure that we have quality teachers in front of those students all the time. Your reading is very important. My summary is to kind of set the stage, to begin some discussions and some debates. And so next week, as we look at our beginning of our class, we will talk about our forward thinking. We'll engage with our readings. We will get into some discussions and some debates, and then move on from there. The next item in your folder is a summary of all of your assignments. If you click on the Research Collaboration Reflection Summary, This is also listed in the syllabus. Your first one, you looked at yourself as an HR leader. Leadership, HR competencies, and challenging concerns, growth areas. And I also provided a link in the announcement page this week that you can go into a website and review some of those critical content areas that will support you as a leader. Also, as you click around that website, it is a business website, and it gives you lots of good content about how to be a wonderful, productive HR leader within your building. As we approach week 5, you will complete a field experience. You can be doing that right now. Right now, I hope that you have begun to identify who an HR leader is that you can have connection with. It could be an assistant principal who does a lot of the hiring. It could be a principal that is the HR leader. It could be someone at your district office. It could be the HR person. It could be an assistant superintendent or superintendent. But you need to find someone that has their hand on the pulse of HR, and so you have a strong understanding of that individual. You're going to interview that individual. You're going to identify 3 to 5 tasks that the HR director considers the most critical for the job. You're going to look at resources and skills that the director or that individual that provides leadership relies on. How does the HR director coordinate with school administrators? Who owns the HR process? How does the HR office support the mission of individual schools? You're going to do a summary of that, and you're going to put together a 3 to 5 page APA paper, and that will be due on the Sunday of week 5. On the Tuesday of week 5, during our WebEx session, we will discuss that and talk about your learnings and your wonderings. Week 6, your collaborative team will turn in a project. We'll go into that depth a little bit more. And your final project, week 7, is going to be a summary of the course and a summary of your learnings. You'll take your first APA assignment, Leadership for HR and the Principal, and take your first week and grow that, looking at what your leadership, what you believe your leadership was, what your leadership is, and what you believe it should be. You're going to review your school culture, climate, and team building. The school that you are the principal of, how are you going to develop that learning culture and that learning community? Hiring, support, develop, and train. What have you learned or what will you learn about that area? Performance appraisals, due process dismissal, and of course, putting together Chapter 6. And again, not a full chapter, 1 or 2 pages per section. Your personal growth plan in the HR area, and that will be due on week 7, the end of week 7. I'm going to click out of that and get into our learning teams information. Right now, everyone should know who their learning teams are. The 3 teams, 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is that which you should know, understand that. Number 2 is as you review the announcement, which I'll go to in just a moment, there is lots of different options in this folder. Also, as you saw, there are 2 samples that you can kind of look at. And as you look at the bottom of this form right here, it tells you some steps. The leadership and team engagement. Who's going to send that first email? Who's going to ask those first questions? How are you going to get your team rolling? It is your responsibility as professionals who will be leading a multi-million-dollar educational organization for you to be able to engage in that type of exercise. What are your communication protocols? Will you communicate via Google Hangouts? Will you communicate via Google Docs? Will it be emails? What are your protocols and what are your individual responsibilities? Who's going to volunteer to take responsibility for different areas? But number 1 is you need to begin to think of your focus. I want to make sure that you take a look at this document. That will give you a very, very good, strong perspective. And next week when we get together with WebEx, you'll be able to ask a few more questions, and hopefully we'll move in a good direction. Don't worry about it too much. We have lots of weeks to go, but I would suggest that you get moving on it. If we go back to the announcement page, in the middle of the announcement page, it talks about your textbook. And your textbook, if you look at each chapter, will give you some ballpark items that you can use for your learning team assignment due week 6. It could be about staffing enrollment, evaluating, selecting applicants, motivation, job satisfaction, teacher induction, mentoring, teacher burnout, professional development. And from there, looking at critical areas specific, it could be specific to your school. It could be a hot topic in your district. It could be something that you recently saw on the news. But you're going to engage in that process, and it is less of an assignment and more of a presentation, a discussion that you're going to lead, a critical HR academic discussion during week 6. You will present that on the Tuesday of week 6, and by the end of that week, you'll turn that in for a group grade. Each time I've ever done this, it has been a powerful experience because you're going to bring 5 to 6 different professionals coming from different environments and all of that knowledge together with some research to support it, and hopefully you'll step out of that as a stronger HR professional. That is a real quick summary of the overview. As we go back to our assignment and content folder, one of the things I want to make crystal clear is as you look at the assignments for each week. For this week, it's a very simple assignment. All you're going to do is try to get your feet on the ground with the assignments for week 5, 6, and 7. You're also going to have your normal reading. You're going to have your discussion, questions, and your forward thinking. And from there, if you do have other questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to engage and answer any questions. Otherwise, see you week 3. And if you have questions, drop me an email, or if you'd like to talk by phone or have a short WebEx session. Otherwise, I believe that we're well on our way. I wish you the best for week 2. Let me know if you have questions. Have a good evening. Thank you.